Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's presentation, Service Coordinators are Experts too, Developing Service Coordinator Expertise Through Specific Professional Development. We are blessed today to have Dana Childress, Corey Hill, and Lisa Terry to talk to us about service coordinators. Thank you for attending. Go ahead.
All right, thanks to Lisa. Well, hi, everybody. I am really grateful that you decided to spend an hour either at the end of your day here, if you're on the East Coast, or maybe around the middle of your day, wherever you are, but with the three of us to talk about service coordination. So service coordination is one of my favorite things to talk about, and I don't think it tends to get enough attention in early intervention. So we're pretty happy to have the opportunity to think with you about the importance of service coordination and the expertise service coordinators bring to our work. I guess I got muted there. Can you guys hear me
okay
now?
You're okay now, Dana.
Okay, was I muted that whole time?
No, you were fine. You did get muted for a second. You're muted. My video doesn't work, but we're all good.
We're all good. I don't know where I got muted. I wasn't pressing any buttons, I promise. Wherever I was just saying we're glad you're here. We're glad you're here to talk about service coordination. So I'm Dana Childress. I work in Virginia with Corey and Lisa. I'm on our state's professional development team for our early intervention system as one of our EI professional development consultants. Before I was in this job, I worked direct service in EI, most of the time in a blended role. So I was an educator on the team and a service coordinator. So had a lot of opportunity to practice service coordination and appreciate the expertise that service coordinators bring to the team. So Corey, you want to go next?
Sure. Thanks, Dana. Hi, everybody. I'm Corey Hill. And as Dana said, we all work in Virginia, and I am the early intervention professional development specialist, having some Zoom snafus. So you'll be able to hear me, but unfortunately my camera is not working right now, but I'm happy to be here. And as Dana shared, I was in direct service for about 11 years, also in a dual role as a service coordinator and a special instructor, and have been doing this professional development role for a long time now. Lisa?
Hi, everyone. I'm Lisa Terry. I'm an early intervention professional development consultant on the team here in Virginia. I've also been in direct services, dual role as a service coordinator and an educator. I've also been a supervisor that really focused on training all new service coordinators that came into a system too. But yes, welcome, and we're excited to get started.
Thanks, guys. Corey, I think your camera might have Zoom fatigue. That's what I think's going on. It just
I know. I have Zoom fatigue, so it's okay if my camera's feeling the pain too.
So we're all just going to feel your camera there. So
there you go.
Well, thank you guys for joining us. So before we jump in, we wanted to find out what was your relationship to service coordination. So if you can use the chat in Zoom, that would be amazing. If you look below where you see us and the slides on your screen, you'll see a little toolbar and look for the chat bubble. That's your chat button. We are going to be monitoring the Whova chat, but it would be great if you could use the Zoom chat, because then we can all see it a little bit easier. So let us know in the Zoom chat, what's your relationship to service coordination? Are you a service coordinator? If you are, yay, we're glad you're at DEC. Are you maybe a supervisor, a trainer of service coordinators? Are you a family member who has experience receiving service coordination? So let's see what pops up in chat. So Tanya's a service coordination supervisor, and Abby's a services coordinator. Wonderful. Abby reminds me that it's called something different in different states. Some states they're called family services coordinators. So different things. Let's see, we have Brianne and Angie as service coordinators. Amy is a service coordinator. Wonderful. Margie, Amber, this is so fantastic, you guys. Jackie's a Part C coordinator. It's wonderful to have you represented here, Jackie, too. And Tammy is with Texas's program. So we've got service coordinators from Nebraska, lots of different places. I can't tell you how much that just makes me want to like giggle with glee to see service coordinators at DEC. It's so wonderful. We're really trying to help service coordinators feel like DEC is your professional home. So welcome, you guys. As we go along today, we would love for you to use chat to let us know about your experiences, your thoughts. We're going to be monitoring it closely because we'd like to have a conversation with you about expertise today. So here's where we're headed. Our objectives for today. We're going to talk about 4 examples of service coordinator expertise. We've pulled those examples from the position statement on service coordination and early intervention. I'm going to show you a screenshot of that in a little while. That's a relatively new DEC and ITCA. That acronym is Infant Toddler Coordinators Association. It's a new joint position statement all about service coordination. That's available on the DEC's website. So if you haven't seen it, I recommend you take a read, especially those of you that are service coordinators. You'll see your work really validated there. We're going to connect service coordination expertise with active family participation because we know the work you guys do is one of the key factors in a successful family experience. We're going to recognize the importance of service coordination specific professional development. You guys know service coordinators often go to early intervention trainings that are really designed for the service providers, the therapists and educators, but we want to promote stuff that's really specific to you guys because your job is different. I hope that you will identify, you'll find information about at least 5, but we're going to talk to you about more professional development resources for service coordinators. And then we'll wrap up with you planning for how you're going to use or share at least one of these training resources after the conference. So that's kind of where we're headed today. So I wanted to get us started by thinking about what does the word expert mean, because it's so pivotal to our session today. So type into your Zoom chat, what does expert mean to you, and how do you know when someone has expertise? And Lisa, if you'll let me know if anybody does pop into the Whova chat, that would be great. So what does this word mean to you? How do you know when you look at someone you think, oh, they're an expert? How do you know that? Let me know in chat. Okay, so Tammy starts us off with knowledgeable. Yep, they're knowledgeable about something, about an area. We often say an area of expertise. Yep, Tammy, that's true. What else? I think it's one of those terms we kind of take for granted that we just know what it means, right? So what are some other characteristics of an expert? Maybe hopefully they're well trained. Yeah, Diana says they have experience. Mary says they've demonstrated an area of expertise or a skill set. Thank you, Mary. You gave us kind of a definition there. All right, I'm going to show you a description of what an expert is. And it's a description that I actually really like. And we're going to think about where does service coordination show up. So experts are simply people who possess a lot of correct information, know a lot about their field, and have the ability to generate new knowledge and answer to questions. So now put in the chat for me, how does service coordination overlap with this definition? What do you see in this definition that reminds you of service coordination? Let me know in the chat. And I guess think about it with particularly high quality service coordination, right? There's a whole range of what service coordination can look like and should look like, but when it's done really well, where do you see overlap? How does it align here? Which key words come out to you that you think, okay, I see how that connects to service coordination? I'm going to hang out, have some of my tea, and give you guys a moment to type. All right, maybe I have stumped the crowd, so I'm going to throw it out. Angie is rescuing me there, right? Asking questions. Amber says you can adapt the process and resources for different families in different situations. And Amber, in order to do that, you have to know the process, right? And you have to know the resources. So service coordinators possess a lot of correct information. We certainly hope it's correct, right? They have to keep up with changing information about resources. They have to understand and know who their team members are. They know how to match people. They know how to facilitate the different components of the EI process and how it works in their program. When we say know a lot about the field.
Whova chat.
Oh, go ahead.
Michelle says direct and accurate information from the family that can help the team adapt and address family concerns.
Yeah, I love that. Taking accurate information from the family and connecting it and providing it to all the rest of the team members. That's a really important point and part of that collaboration piece we're going to talk about. And I also think service coordination shows up here with the ability to generate new knowledge and answer to questions. Maybe service coordinators aren't doing the research that generates the new knowledge, but service coordinators are the places people go to ask the questions. And it's your job as a service coordinator to find the answer. When I was a service coordinator, especially a new one, I was pretty overwhelmed and I often thought, I don't know. And I was sort of embarrassed to say, I don't know. And then I figured out I don't have to know, but I need to know where to go and I need to find the answer. And that was my commitment to families. So it was especially hard at the beginning. You might look at this as a new service coordinator and go, I don't know if I possess correct information yet. I'm still learning about the field and I don't have all the answers. That's okay. As a service coordinator, you figure out how to get them. And that's what's important. So we say service coordinators are absolutely experts too. So type into the chat, what expertise do service coordinators bring to the early intervention team? When you think about your role, since we have a lot of service coordinators here, what's the expertise you bring to the team? Or think about your staff if you're a supervisor. Goal writing, yes, as service coordinators facilitate that goal writing process. Brianne says a lot of information about community resources to help families. And Brianne, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about community resources. Amber says expertise in the routines-based interview, yep, which a lot of programs use. Communication skills. Mary brings in the local resources again, but also IFSP development. And yeah, Mary, procedural safeguards is one of the things the law, Part C says, service coordinators, that's a key role that service coordinators have, is to make sure families are aware of and that their rights and procedural safeguards are protected. Aspen says the coaching model of service delivery, the ability to understand and help families with parental rights, facilitating IFSP meetings and facilitating team meetings. So Aspen has put a lot of areas of expertise there. And Aspen, I'm right there with you. I agree that there's a lot that service coordinators bring to the table. But we also know, service coordinators don't always feel valued and they don't always feel like their expertise is respected or are even recognized. So I would like to send you guys to the right of your screen where you see me in the slides and look at the poll question. We have a poll in there about whether or not service coordinators are recognized as experts on your EI teams. If you haven't already, type your answer into the poll. We'll give you about a minute or two, and then Lisa will help me out with letting me know what you guys said. You're also welcome to use chat if that's easier, but let me know, do you feel valued on your early intervention teams? Why or why not? Let me know. What's your take on how others view your role or others view the role of the service coordinator? So either in the poll or in chat. Yeah, this isn't the kind of question that you really, service coordinators usually just say yes or no to, right? They usually have some thoughts about this, and this is a safe place to go. Yep, Mary says not necessarily. This is a safe place to be honest, because Mary's take on that is actually pretty true for a lot of service coordinators. And Mary, if you want to let us know in chat, why do you say not necessarily? Like, what comes up for you about that? What else, Lisa? Are you seeing anything else in the poll?
Yeah, so we have about 16 answers in the chat. So there's a few yeses actually. It says my early intervention team looks to me for knowledge on Part C. Another yes, they are as integral a part of the team as a therapist and can bring another perspective. Another one shares they have great insight for the team. There's some that are dual providers as well. And then there's some that are kind of in the middle, like it depends on the situation and honestly which district that they're in. And then there's a lot of no's. There's a couple people said that they feel like they're the paper pushers, not the experts too, or their service coordinators report being challenged by other team members when they're making some suggestions.
Yeah, I think thank you, Lisa. All of those things, and Amy's comment on the Zoom side says no. Many times as a service coordinator, I feel the team members think I'm an unnecessary part of the team. Amy, I appreciate your honesty there, because that's kind of heartbreaking, right? Because you are in fact the only team member that Congress said has to be on every IFSP team. Service coordinators are the only service that all children receive, all families receive, which I actually think makes you a pretty important part of the team. You are not unnecessary at all. But the things that you guys said, yes, I love it, that says, yes, my team looks to me for information about Part C. And others said, sometimes, depends on the situation, or not necessarily. We've heard in some surveys of service coordinators those messages. And in fact, it's a pretty strong voice that service coordinators often feel undervalued. And I think one of the reasons is because you see the picture on the screen, this service coordinator is doing her work behind the scenes. Service coordinators aren't always there with the children and the families, right? They're not always up front. They're often holding everything up in the background. And I hear you when you say you feel like paper pushers. I think sometimes service coordinators feel like that because, gosh, the amount of paperwork, but often other people see you that way because you're the one bringing the procedural safeguard forms. Aspen says, I love, oh, hold on, mine just switched up. I love, remind my service coordinators are the only required service. Yeah, and Aspen, I've heard service coordinators say when they read the joint position statement on service coordination, that's another way to validate them, that they were important enough that 2 professional organizations dedicated 1.5 years to writing a statement about them. Mary says, depending on her state system, states have providers who are also service coordinators. So service coordination is an activity that might be viewed as secondary. Yeah, it can be hard to juggle that blended role for sure. So let's think about why folks who other people might, and service coordinators might struggle to understand the expertise that service coordinators bring to the team. So there's lots of different reasons. I'm going to touch on 4 here. Upper left-hand corner, we see variety of backgrounds. There's no particular university program that trains service coordinators that says like a physical therapist goes to school to become a physical therapist. Folks who do your work often come from lots of different backgrounds, right? Educational, professional backgrounds, different experiences. So it can be a little less clear unless you make it clear what service coordinators bring to the team. Along with that, there can be team members with a lack of understanding or knowledge about what service coordinators do. They might also not have learned much about service coordination in their pre-service university training. This is particularly true from folks in our therapy disciplines who are learning about the whole lifespan, to do PT or OT or speech language pathology for the lifespan. Hopefully they learned about EI, and even if they did, they might have bumped up against a service coordinator on an internship. That's not often something that's talked about a lot. And then your role is very unique. There aren't, I don't know of many other fields that have somebody that does what you do. There are also differences across states. And I think, let's see, Mary in the Zoom chat kind of touched on this. Differences in implementation of service coordination. There are different models, right? We've talked about that, blended and dedicated models. I'm not a fan of that word dedicated, because if you're in a blended model, it doesn't mean you're not a dedicated service coordinator. You work hard, but those are the 2 names in the models as it was described. We've heard from service coordinators in surveys that they often feel undercompensated for the amount of work that's on their workloads. So there's difference across the country, across for early intervention in compensation and in what's expected of the service coordination workload. And that workload is often high and has a lot happening there. But we also see differences in what service coordinators do, how actively they participate on teams, and whether or not they act as team leaders. Somebody in the chat, in the Zoom chat, Lisa, it sounds like they said they get pushback from other team members. That can certainly make team leadership hard, especially if as a service coordinator, you're still getting used to your role as a leader. And then finally down here, I think this one is a really important one too. Service coordinators, we want service coordinators to feel their own value, because I think you have to feel valued before you convey that to other people. We have the paper pushers versus linchpin argument. You guys already brought that up. Sometimes service coordinators can be viewed as the person who just gets papers signed, makes sure timelines are met, and that's really all they do. As you guys have already said in the chat, you do tons more than that. Not that those things aren't valuable, but you've also been described as the linchpin of the whole early intervention system. So let me show you a quote next that's from the DEC position statement that speaks to your believing in your own value. So service coordinators must believe in their own value. The service coordinator's contribution to the team is more than a record keeper who manages documentation in the paper trail. Service coordination includes leading the team and bringing team members' approaches and resources together to support each family. So you guys are individualizing your work just like your other providers are. We know that responsive, family-centered service coordination is a cornerstone of a successful experience from families. And there's some previous research on service coordination. It's a little older now, but I think it's still relevant. In that research, families were asked about service coordination, and they reported that when they felt really supported and had a good relationship with their service coordinator, that was a deal breaker for their experience in early intervention. So I want you guys to walk away today with us, everybody hearing your own value so that you can find ways to convey that to others as well. Asper said, I once had a family tell me that you're the glue of their EI services. Yeah, absolutely. The best compliment. I love that, Amber. Thank you. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to move into talking about 4 areas of service coordinator expertise. These areas of expertise were mentioned in the Joint Position Statement on Service Coordination. The position statement discusses how service coordinators bring expertise in navigating the early intervention process. You guys are the ones that usually know the whole process the best. Bring expertise in leading teams and collaborating with team members. We've mentioned accessing community resources several times in the chat. And then finally, building strong family professional partnerships. So you guys are going to help us decide which of these we're going to talk about first. We're going to do them in pairs. So we're going to talk about either 1 and 2 to get first or 3 and 4 first. So type into chat and let me know which of these are you most interested in. You know, if you really want to hear about expertise related to leading teams, or you're really interested in the family partnership, or you can just say, I want to know about 3 and 4. Type it into chat and let us know where we should begin, whether we should start with 1 and 2 or we should start with 3 and 4. You give me some guidance and you're going to choose your own adventure. So let me know in the chat where to start. Thanks, Jackie. She gets us started. So there's 1 vote for 1 and 2. Jennifer seconds that vote. Let's see if others have an idea. Aspen gives us an exclamation point with 1 and 2. Let's see if anybody's going to shake it up with 3 and 4, or maybe we're consistent. Anything on your end, Lisa?
Nothing on my end. Looks like everyone's using the Zoom chat now.
Okay, which is great. Okay, well, that sounds like good. I guess we'll go with the 3 votes for 1 and 2. So I'm going to click us over there to 1 and 2, and I will hand it over to Lisa to talk us through 1 and 2.
Thanks, Dana. So let's look at what the Joint Position Statement really has to say about this first area of expertise. So first, a service coordinator must have expertise in the early intervention process, including understanding requirements, processes, and recommended practices in helping families navigate the local early intervention system from referral or exit, which really, that's a huge job that service coordinators have, right? Especially because you're there with the family from the beginning to the end. So let's type in chat. So what do service coordinators do to help families navigate the early intervention process? So what do you do to help families navigate that early intervention process? Type in chat. What does that look like for you? I know that's a big question, so you guys are probably typing away. Maureen, explaining the family rights, and that's such a critical part. And so we have to know about those rights and then have a really great explanation for the family. So that way they know what their rights are from the very beginning until the end. Absolutely. Let's see, coordinate an evaluation and MDT, was that a typo? MDT eating, scheduling, IFSP, the transition plan for transition to Part B. Yes, that transition is such a huge part. Scheduling that IFSP meeting, making sure that you have all of those pieces in place. And there's really different parts that service coordinators are involved, very specific throughout the process. Dana, it's a little bit wonky on my end for the Zoom chat. So I might miss something. So just let me know if I do, because my screen keeps moving every time I try to scroll.
Okay.
So I am at the intake. We're making sure that we're discussing the process. Yeah, so you're really describing to the family what early intervention looks like. And along the way, you're really walking them each step of the way. So I love that. You're really talking about how you're guiding them along the way. Yeah, and then next, how nice, Mary, for that to jump in after, explaining the evaluation and functional assessment process, the IFSP process, service delivery, family rights, timelines, and procedural safeguards. Absolutely. And then explaining that paperwork, getting those consent signed. Yeah, so you really want to make sure that we're giving those thorough explanations before we're getting them to sign some of those consents. So that way they really do know what exactly it is that they're signing. So let's move on to the next slide, because there's different parts of this from the statement. So this looks at really understanding those local, state, and federal policies and procedures, right? And then how to apply them effectively to service delivery. And then we're going to be preparing families for each step in the process, just like you all said, especially because a lot of families, they really are unfamiliar with how this works. Also, early intervention is so different from anything that they might have ever seen or they've experienced before. And even if there is a family that's kind of had another child go through the program, they might have had a different experience, especially if they come from a different system too. So really making sure that we're providing them that information and ensuring that caregivers are informed decision makers, because we really want to make sure that they know how to make the best decisions for their child throughout the process, and that they're also actively participating throughout the early intervention process as well. So there are two different ways that service coordinators can help families navigate that early intervention process, as you can see on the screen. So especially if we're really thinking about from the beginning, those very first steps, like you guys mentioned, that intake, the assessment, the initial IFSP. So we can either help families participate in the process by planning for them or planning with them. So that difference is really important for us to understand, because when you're planning for families, you're really just telling them how those processes work. You're telling them what to expect, and really kind of just really giving them all of that information, kind of like an information overload versus getting some of that participation. So for example, you might explain the assessment process and tell the caregiver that they're going to be asked a lot of open-ended questions, and they're really going to be asked those questions specifically about their child's development and daily activities. And then you're going to tell her who's going to participate in the assessment, how long it's going to be, when it's going to be, the day that it's going to be. And when you're planning for families, the family members, they're really going to be those passive recipients of that information. So they're just taking all of this information in, right? So service coordinators aren't really supporting that active participation or decision-making process. So those are both really important features of family-centered practices, right? So this information might have a little bit more of a different context for families. So all they know is what the service coordinator tells them, because they're really relying on the service coordinators to give them a little bit more information. So that's why your role is so critical. And when you're thinking about planning for the families or planning with the families, because this might limit the family's ability to really fully prepare for how they want to participate in the process. And this process is really designed, to learn about them and learn about their child, right? So now let's think about how we're planning with a family for the initial evaluation and assessment. So type that in chat. How do you plan with the family? Not for the family, but how do you plan with the family for the initial evaluation and assessment? Go ahead and type that in chat. Oh, thanks, Corey. Corey, drop that question into the chat for you. Yeah, that, Amber, you're going to ask their concerns. What are their concerns? What are their priorities? What are their preferences, right? What are their needs? Thinking about those scheduling options, right? When would they like to meet? Absolutely. Yep, you're going to ask about their concerns, Mary. You're going to ask about those daily routines. What keeps them up at night? Oh, what a great question, Mary. Really diving in deep with the family with that question. What keeps them up at night? And if they know why the referral was made, which sometimes they don't, right? That's what we find out, is that they weren't the ones that made the referral. They're not really sure, or maybe they don't really have the same concerns. And so really addressing that and really involving them and getting a little bit more feedback from the family. And then you can also find out who else would like to participate, right? There's lots of different caregivers surrounding a child's life. So sometimes they might have their partner that wants to, maybe they have a grandparent that wants to participate in the process too, that the child's also around. And so we really need to, just think about that, because service coordinators really should be intentional in planning with families, encouraging their active participation throughout the process, because sometimes it gets really hard, right? Especially, I just remember I used to have such a high caseload before, and it would just get so busy, and you kind of just get in this rote routine where you're just going from one family to the next. And so you're like, I know I have to get this done and this done. But really just kind of pausing, taking that breath before you're going into the family's home, and really making sure that we're being intentional and we're giving them that time, and really explaining that to them, because we do want them to engage them as partners. Yeah. Oh, I love that, Maureen. Yes. What is the best time of the day for your child and family? Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for participating in the chat. I appreciate that. So let's look at the second part. So leading teams and collaborating with team members. So similarly, the second area is really emphasizing the service coordinator's leadership role and collaboration that happens with and among other team members. So understanding this leadership role, which has really been described as the glue or the linchpin that kind of holds the team together, is really important for service coordinators. It's important for their supervisors, and also it's really important for other team members as well, right? And as leaders, service coordinators really make sure that all team members, including the family, understand and participate in team activities throughout that early intervention process. So we're going to take a look at that, some of the other components from the position statement. And the first thing is bringing together a multidisciplinary team of professionals to provide those services that really capture a family's concern that you guys mentioned, but then also honoring the family's priorities, right? So we're going to get their concerns, and then we're going to really hone in on what the family's priorities are, and then we're going to really champion the caregiver's confidence in promoting their child's development. And then the next thing is facilitating those interactions and maintaining communication among team members. And that's really important, because service coordinators really do act as kind of like that central hub for collaboration. And so you really are the direct service point for each individual on that team, each person that's on that IFSP plan, including the family, right? And then the next one is organizing participation of all members, including the family, on evaluation and assessment teams, IFSP development teams, and service delivery teams. And then we want to make sure that we're having a good grasp of service delivery options that are available in the program and the community, and maintain those positive relationships with those team members. And again, sometimes when you're a new service coordinator, like Dana said, you might not always know what the resources are, but it's more about knowing where to go for those resources. And then finally, advocating for families and helping families learn to advocate for themselves. So let's look in their roles as leaders and collaboratives. Service coordinators, again, they have two options, right? So they can either facilitate that passive participation of family members and other team members, or they can facilitate active participation. So let's think about what this might look like for some of that passive participation. So type into chat some characteristics of team members who are passive participants during an IFSP member. So think about the family and then think of other team members. What does that look like? Type into chat characteristics of team members who are passive participants during an IFSP meeting. And I have a feeling you guys probably have a lot of input on this. I'm sure you've seen a lot of different things. Thanks again, Corey, for typing that question in the chat for us. I know that sometimes these are bigger questions, so it might take you guys a little bit to type too. So we're thinking about passive participation for families, what does that look like, and passive participation for other team members. All right, Diana gets us started. Thanks, Diana. Yeah, letting providers decide what services the family needs. Oh, that's such a great example, Diana. It's such an awkward thing when it happens, right, during the meeting. So it's not really a discussion. It's not really including the family. It's kind of like, we're the experts and we're going to tell you, right? And so it's really not any of that team collaboration that's going on with the families. And we really want to make sure that families are fully informed of all of the service delivery options too and what's available. So thanks. Yeah, passive, agreeing and not saying anything. Yeah. So sometimes I've been in a lot of different assessment teams where we might have one person that that says a lot during the meetings, and then we have another person that kind of just stands back and watches the process more and doesn't participate as much. And so that's where service coordinators really do have that opportunity to kind of jump in and facilitate that discussion to really gain input from each person around the room too. Oh, Amber, professionals having side conversations during the meeting. Yes, and that's another one of those awkward moments, right? Especially for the family, because you're like, what is the family thinking right now that they're talking about? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the report out, that round robin style by IFSP members. And that's what we really want to make sure that we're having a joint discussion and we're including everybody in that in those discussions that we're having. And you want to make sure some other things is making sure that we're giving the family time to really review the forms before we're asking them to sign. I don't know, has anybody ever had a family sign a blank IFSP before, seen that happen? That's definitely one of those big no-nos, right? Because we definitely know that that's a legal document and we want to make sure that the family understands it before they're signing anything. So some other things that the service coordinator can, if the service coordinator isn't always inviting input from other team members too, and they're kind of just standing by. You guys mentioned in the poll too that sometimes the providers, they kind of just take over, right? And so that might be another example of passive participation too. So one of the main roles that the service coordinator does have is to really facilitate that active participation of all team members, especially the caregivers, right? Because we really do want to make sure it's not awkward for them and that they are really fully engaged. So what we're going to do next is we are going to look at a scenario. It's kind of like a what would you do scenario. So this scenario really highlights the service coordinator's role with navigating the early intervention process and team leadership. So as we read it, just imagine, what would you do if you were the service coordinator? And I'm sure that you guys will probably have some thoughts on that. So let's go ahead and read the scenario. So at the initial IFSP meeting, Olivia's parents listened quietly as the other team members discussed their daughter's development with them. Olivia's parents have been relatively quiet during the IFSP meeting, offering little input so far. They agree with any suggestions that other team members have. When the service coordinator asks about what goals they have for the daughter, they hesitate. Olivia's father then looks at the service coordinator and says, We don't know. You're the experts. You tell us. So what are your first impressions? Go ahead and type that in chat. What are your first impressions with that? Has this ever happened to you before? And I can't see anybody, Dana. So I was going to do the raise your hand thing, but I don't know if people have their cameras on. So if this has happened to you before too, type yes, no, and then give me your first impressions. It happens a lot. Yes. Yep, another yes. Amber jumps in, parents are the experts on their children. Yeah, it happens. Yes, a lot. Yeah, so we definitely always see that. And sometimes that's just one of those things where you really have to make sure that we're fully communicating with the family. Sorry, I lost the chat again, Dana. But we're fully communicating with the family and letting them, just know a little bit more. We're explaining to them what the IFSP goals are. We're giving them a lot more information, and then we're asking them some of those good questions too. Like one of the questions that somebody asked earlier, what keeps you up at night, right? Or you could ask, what would you like to see Olivia do next or learn next? Dana, I know I'm missing things in the chat and I've completely lost them. So I don't know if you can jump in.
That's okay. Aspen says it definitely happens more than she would like, but it's a great opportunity to remind the family of the importance of their role, that they are the experts. They bring their expertise on their child. Mary says she would refer back to their priorities, which is a great strategy. And Maureen says parents are not engaged. Oh, that's one of those. Yeah, if parents are not engaged, if they're really quiet, that's definitely a red flag. And I think that's a red flag. We definitely want to pause there and see what's going on. So that's what's happening.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks, Dana, for that. Sorry, it's a little bit wonky on my end with the chat over here in Huba. But, one of the things I always like to think about too, especially when the parents are quiet, is their personality, right? Like they might not be, they kind of might stand back. Actually, it's kind of funny because I'm like one of those people that are really outgoing and usually I jump in. But when I am in those professional situations, like with the doctor, I tend to stay quiet. And so sometimes parents are quiet because they don't know what their role is. They don't know when to speak up. They don't know what to say. Yeah, you're right. It could be a cultural norm, Amber, and to not trust professionals and not question them. You're so right. And so we got to really think about those, dig a little bit deeper and consider that. And I like what Dana said, we really want to make sure that we're pausing with it. Renee said this is why the RBI is so important because all the information is directly from the parent's mouth. Yes, and the RBI is the routines-based interview. If anyone doesn't know what that is, but it's one of those specific tools that you have to be trained on. Yeah, and Aspen shares that as a service coordinator, when this happened to me with Reflection Later, I would try to find opportunities I missed to demonstrate active listening and to ask more open-ended questions directly to the family about what they're seeing. Sometimes shifting your body toward the family. Oh, I love that, how you're really thinking about your body and your awareness and how that can kind of be a great model, and you're showing that you're interested into what the family is saying as well. And you're modeling for them. Thanks. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. So what would your, oh, sorry. There we are. Okay, so the professional, no, go ahead. Here's a list of professional development resources, and I'm going to go over those. I believe they are on your handout. So if you go to Huva under the session, under our bios, you should see a handout that's listed there. So all of these are listed for you, but they're really great resources to really help build your capacity for navigating the early intervention process and leading early intervention teams. So just remember to access those on your handout. But the first one is an online course that we call the Many Facets of Service Coordination. So it's on our Virginia Early Intervention e-learning center site. And this course, it really just covers a lot of the key aspects of the early intervention service coordination. So it's also including some of those leadership requirements and then the responsibilities of the service coordinator's role in supporting families and team members in the delivery of these services. And so these are free. That's a free course that you can access, and you do get professional development hours once you complete it. And then the joint position statement on service coordination and early intervention, that includes an appendix entitled Roles and Responsibilities of the Service Coordinator during the early intervention process. So there you'll actually find a really detailed description of what service coordinators do at each step in the process, from referral to discharge and exit. So that appendix can be shared with new service coordinators. If you're a supervisor and you're training new service coordinators, feel free to share that with other team members, with students that are in the field. And then this appendix can also be shared with anyone else that you're working with, so they can really gain a little bit more knowledge about what service coordinators do. And then the third thing that we want to highlight is the EI on the Fly podcast. It's really, there's a series called Teaming and Collaboration. Dana actually hosts that. And there's a 5-episode series that focuses on 5 different components of successful teaming and collaboration. So there's the first one, understanding shared team purpose. The second one is sharing common tasks and understanding unique roles. The third one is valuing and respecting team members. The fourth, communicating openly and honestly. And then the fifth is helping one another learn and grow. So all of these are really essential for service coordinators also to understand, right? And then lastly, another resource that we're going to give you, we're filling you guys with resources today. There's a lot of different archived webinars that are available. We actually have a service coordination specific tab on our website that you can access a lot of different topics all relevant to service coordinators. And DEC's Service Coordination Community of Practice, they also store archived webinars. I don't know if you guys have ever visited there, but head over to their page too. And then the Early Intervention Training Program in Illinois, it's also another great place to go for service coordinator resources. The webinar that we're highlighting here, that was hosted by the Service Coordinator Training Group called How Do You Do It? Juggling and Overcoming Service Coordination Challenges. So those are challenges that were related to juggling the workload and coordinating and collaborating with members that were discussed. And I'm going to pass it on to Corey for the next one for accessing community resources.
Thanks, Lisa. For anybody who joined a little bit late, I'm having some trouble with my Zoom camera, so that is why I am not live on screen. But one of the really nice things about this joint position statement is that it is providing so much meat to help explaining your job and what you're doing. And the next area that we're going to talk about, the area of expertise, is accessing community resources, which you all shared right from the beginning. So I want you to think about this statement. When a caregiver needs help problem solving, identifying, or accessing a community resource to meet a need or address an IFSP outcome, the service coordinator is the primary source of information on the EIT. Information from these community partners can then be shared with families to help them access needed resources and build their capacities to find them in the future, especially after the child and family are no longer receiving early intervention. So one of the takeaway pieces I want you to think about that is many of us who have provided service coordination, we do it because we like to be helpers. And what we really want to focus on with this particular statement is that the key is to build the family's capacity. When we're gone, they still know how to advocate, how to access resources for themselves. So let's look at what the joint position statement says about this expertise. One of the things that service coordinators do is build relationships with referral sources. So with doctors and other medical professionals, with social service, with support programs, all different kinds of community partners. Frequently, we gather and maintain knowledge of available resources, and then we help families find and access resources on their own. Again, that family capacity building. So I want you to think, if you are a new service coordinator, or back when you were a new service coordinator, how did you learn about community resources? What were some strategies you used? If you can type those in the Zoom chat, that would be great. Another thing is, if you've been a veteran service coordinator for quite a while, how do you stay fresh? How do you stay current on your resources in your community? Amber says veteran service coordinators can stay. Ooh, I just lost it, Amber. Hang on, just a second. There we go. Staying current, that collaborating with team members, talking to family, using an eco map. Yes, that's a great strategy, and really thinking about what the family needs. Mary says there was a directory or a resource that would be routinely updated. Willow says there's a great website to search resources by zip code, and she's put that in chat. Build community relationships. Maureen, absolutely. So often it's about the relationships. Collaborating with other service coordinators, hearing what they're doing, that networking opportunity, because service coordination can be a pretty isolating job at times. So I like that idea, Rose. Actively researching programs when I hear things being mentioned. Participating on a local community response team to network with other professionals. Yeah, so it sounds like even outside of early intervention with colleagues, local chamber of commerce. Yeah, all good strategies. Always kind of think, how did you learn this, or how do you help people learn it, and how do you stay current? So I think those are the key takeaways. So like all the other slides that Lisa shared, we always have these two options. So when you're helping a family access community resources, you can either do the work for the family, or you can do the work with the family and do that together. And again, what service coordinators really need to learn is how to share the skills and the information that they know or they've learned how to do to support families so they can decrease their reliance on their service coordinator and the support that they need over time. That's, again, especially important with community resources, because early intervention is going to end at the latest by the time the child turns 3, and families are going to continue to need those resources. So think about an example of if a family needs childcare. What is the way that you could do that to work with the family rather than doing the work for the family? Type that in chat. Kind of get us started while you all are typing. One of the things we know we could do is provide the family with a list of all the child care programs in the area. But again, how do you get more specific information? How does the family take an active role in that? What they might be searching for, how can you help them know how to do that in the future? I'm watching to see if anybody had other ideas, asking them about resources they may already be aware of. What do they know is available? What's important about quality childcare? What are some things you want to look for? Asking open-ended questions about their preferences for their child and what they value as a family. Yeah, Amber says that Nebraska's DHHS website has lots of good information. So sometimes families just need to be asked, what is it that they're looking for? Not just, here's a list of all the local child care. So again, the away is think about how you can help working together with the family rather than what is so much faster sometimes to do the work for the family. But it's like that old saying about teach a man to fish. You know, we're helping them for the long run. The fourth area of expertise in the joint position statement is building strong family professional partnerships. And the position statement says through regular communication with caregivers, special instructors, therapists, physicians, etc., the service coordinator helps all team members remain fully informed about the child's progress, changing family priorities, needs, questions, and changes to outcome services or other information on the IFSP. So what we want is if the service coordinator is the only one who's building those strong partnerships, that doesn't serve the family, again, at the end of their time in early intervention. So we really want to think about that. Next slide, please. So encouraging communication among all team members is so critical. We know that regular communication is important, and what that looks like and how frequently that happens may depend on requirements in your agency or your system, and how you do that. It might be communication through text and through quick phone calls. It might be incidental in the hallway of the agency during meetings with families. So thinking about those opportunities. Another thing is to really focusing on building that communication that then in turn builds trust, respect, and partnerships, and ensuring that families know their rights and procedural safeguards. You all hit on that. And finally, making sure that all team members, especially the families, are valued as equal and full participants and partners. Dana, I'm watching our time. Give me a nod. Do you want me to go ahead and do the, okay. There is a quick vignette, but we're going to share a couple professional development resources. Again, these are in your handout, but I'm going to hit the highlights. There is a practice guide about coaching families during service coordination. There is a wonderful video that shows a good example of good coaching and bad coaching regarding a community resource that the child needs. There is the knowledge skills for service coordination, which just came out recently. And then we have these things called learning bites that are staff development activities that you can do sometimes in 10 or 15 minutes to help build your staff capacity around topics of service coordination. All of these things are available on our website and through your handout.
All right.
I'll turn it back to Dana.
Yeah, thank you, Corey. So that was a lot to take in an hour, and I guess we only have 2 minutes left. So you've gotten information on areas of expertise. You've gotten information on professional development resources that we hope you'll check out later. We would love for you to be thinking about how you could share or use what you've learned today. If there's a concept that really rang true to you, we'd love for you to make yourself a note in your phone or on your device to remind yourself about it next week when you get back to real life, or maybe if you're doing visits now. Please feel free to check out the resources on the handout. And if there's any questions you have and you need more information, more resources about any of the areas of expertise, feel free to reach out to any of the three of us. And we might all be in Virginia, but we're happy to help you guys wherever you are. So I think with about maybe a minute and a half left, we can see if you guys have questions or comments in the chat. Let us know. I always love knowing if there was something today that was kind of like your aha or your takeaway for today. Type that into chat for us. We always love to know just what was the thing that rang true for you today. So type that into chat for us, and we're wrapping up. You're very welcome, Mary. Thank you for spending your time with us. I do know there was another service coordination session at the same time as this one, which was kind of a bummer if you wanted to go to service coordination sessions. So we hope you'll check out that other session from our colleagues in Illinois when all the sessions are available as recordings. So let us know what your takeaway is, and otherwise we will talk to you hopefully in another session tomorrow. So have a wonderful afternoon, evening, guys. Thanks for joining us.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.
Amber says,
Hi,
"Thank you,
everybody.
excited to
Thank
share this."
you.
Oh, sorry, Corey. Amber
That's
says
okay.
she's excited to share, so that's always good to hear. Thanks, Amber. If you need anything else, we have a great service coordination and early intervention topic page on the Virginia website too that Amber might be helpful for your other service coordinators too.
Thank you to the presenters and thank you to all attendees.